I'm Alex Stone, former military service member and law enforcement officer, now CEO of Echelon Protective Services, one of the fastest growing private security firms on the West Coast. And this is Ride Along, where our guest and I witness firsthand the issues affecting our community. I believe our proven method of enacting meaningful change through compassion and understanding is the best way to make our streets a safer place and truly achieve security through community.
My name is Lance Orton, and I'm the Executive Director of City Team Portland, as well as Night Strike. I'm here today to do the Ride Along podcast and talk about the issues that are happening on the ground and see if we can't focus on solutions.
Hey, Alex Stone here. Welcome back to the Ride Along. We have a great guest today. He's actually a good friend of mine, an associate, and just a fellow street worker, right? A real person who really cares about folks. His name's Lance Orton. He's an executive director of an amazing nonprofit, and he's here out of Portland. Lance, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks and give a little bit of a background?
Sure. My name's Lance. I'm a recovering heroin addict here in Portland. And like Alex said, I run an organization here that I actually went through a treatment program that I went through just about 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years, October 1st. That was the last day that I was on the streets. Went through a program and learned about my addiction, learned about why it was eating me up, and I'm one of the lucky ones that got out alive, and here I am getting ready to celebrate 5 years of radical sobriety, and
that's awesome, bro.
Get to help others.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that, man.
Thank you.
I know that that darkness. I watch a show called Dexter, and he talks about his dark passenger, and people that get caught up in the dope game, whether it's selling dope or whether it's doing dope or whether it's both. Yeah. It really is kind of a dark passenger. Yeah. Right. There's a level of comfort it brings, especially when you become addicted.
Sure.
That substance is like your best friend.
Yep.
And getting freedom from that dark passenger, man, that's totally legit, and I give you 100% props for that.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm really grateful. I can relate to that dark passenger, and it's always there. It's still in there.
Yeah. He's in the trunk though, wrapped up in duct tape.
That's right. I have to keep him there.
We keep him in the trunk.
Right. And I keep him there by going out and helping others like me.
That's right. Service.
Get through it. That's right.
So before we go back in time, right? Let's. I want the audience to know that this is going to be an in-studio session. We're not going to go out on the streets today, but one of the questions I like to ask folks when I'm on the streets doing that type of work, trying to get people into detox, trying to get them into a shelter, right? I ask, when you were in second grade and your teacher asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did you really think that you were going to put, I want to be homeless and an addict on the streets of Portland?
Yeah. I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't remember exactly if it was second grade, but I did get asked that question, and I had plenty of answers, standard astronaut, architect, awesome. Strangely. I wanted to be an architect at one point, wanted to play for the 49ers, those kinds of things. And for a while there, when I, fast forward from that time to 42 years old, which was the last year out on the streets and in my addiction, there was some regret around that. In fact, the last day, I was living in the back of my 99 Jeep Cherokee in a Walmart parking lot out in Troutdale, trying to detox from heroin. And I remember laying back in that Jeep, and I was just, I didn't see a way out. I wanted to die. There was so much shame and regret, and the thought was, how does a 42-year-old college-educated guy from a good family, a good upbringing, get to this point? And I had been pretty low before, and I was always able to claw my way back out and kind of get myself plugged back into society. At least from the outside looking in, I could play that game, but inside,
the image was broken.
It was completely shattered. And I will tell you this, though, once I got sober and went through the program and, through a program of recovery and understood it all, there's no regret today. I'm so grateful for my addiction because it's given me the purpose that I have today. It's made me the man that I'm becoming today. And that was my last prayer. And this was before I had any faith in my life.
Yeah.
It was a prayer to the universe, was for purpose. Wow. I was like, please, I don't know how to be a 42-year-old. I need some purpose in my life, a reason to exist, because I was thinking about which buildings in Portland had no guardrails around them so I could go off and jump. And those who know me well, I got a lot of zeal for life. Like, I'm a naturally optimistic person. I was one of those.
The cup is always half full.
Right. I'm of the 51% that is naturally positively optimistic in life. And to get to that point where literally I was suicidal, just speaks to how deadly that addiction is.
It's deadly. And, on the street, the street robs you.
Yeah. It's a lonely place.
It robs you. It takes the two things you need in order to not commit suicide. It takes your self-worth, and then it takes your self-agency.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's kind of where you found yourself in that Jeep, in that parking lot, right? Your worth was gone, so you had no value. There was no value. Why should I be here?
I had no significance in my life. And then
you didn't see the ability to develop further on, right? That agency, the ability to make a decision for yourself. And you're like, the only decision I can make is suicide because, I have no worth.
Right. And
that's a dangerous place to be.
It is. And once you burn all the bridges, which I had, every bridge, I mean, even my family, I know I know they love me and they care for me, but they had put up what I would call today healthy boundaries and said, look, no more money, no more couches. But I needed that. I needed those doors to be shut in order to get to the next step, which was a complete surrender. And I needed help. And if it hadn't been for the shelter and the program I went through opening their doors to me, I don't know what I would have done. And it also took that Jeep getting taken from me.
Wow.
As part of the story, we can get to that, but it was stolen by somebody that I owed money to, a drug dealer. And if it wasn't for that, I wasn't truly on the street, I probably never would have made it.
Because so you got indebted to your drug dealer.
Yeah.
And the dope man took your Jeep.
That's right.
I mean, this should be a movie. I mean, the dope man repoed your Jeep. Wow.
That's right. And drove off into the sunset. And that moment was a key, pivotal moment. It was a necessary moment. I remember standing as the Jeep drove away, and there was this very strange, unexpected serenity that came over me, almost a giggle. And
you're like, this is it.
How did I? Yeah.
You're at the end of your rope.
That's when I had the 42-year-old college educated. How did I get here?
Yeah.
But I also knew internally that this was the rock bottom that I needed. I cannot go lower than this.
So let's explore that a little bit, right? So when you lose the ability to be enabled by others who love you, and when you lose your support structures, right? Your Jeep.
Shelter, right.
What is it about being at the rock bottom as an individual, right? What is it about that makes you confront death? And you're really left with that one option. Well, I'm either going to have to make it, I'm either going to have to figure out if I have any agency left, or I'm just going to die. Right. Like, what is it about that requires us to go to these lengths, mentally and emotionally, spiritually even, to change? Why is that?
Well, it is, for me, in my case, very spiritual. It was. I didn't see it in the moment, but we call that the gift of desperation. That's the moment.
I never heard that.
Yeah, it's the gift of desperation is the moment when you realize that you need help, or you need to not exist anymore. And I was thinking that
it really is that binary.
Yeah, it is at that point. And it's not even binary. I mean, it was only for me. It was only suicide. I couldn't think of another way. And but in that moment, as the Jeep drove off, I had that moment. I started walking, and the things that happen, the sequence of events that happened from then until now are just a series of like divine intervention. I mean, I wound up having a panic attack, woke up in the hospital. Someone found me unconscious.
Wow, really?
Woke up in the hospital. By the time the hospital checked me out and said, hey, you're actually pretty healthy other than being addicted to drugs and 35 pounds underweight, we got to discharge you. And they gave me a voucher.
I love it.
To the shelter that I now run.
Yep.
And that's just to get there. I mean, how does that stuff happen? It certainly wasn't my choice.
You don't even know who
I didn't
got you
say
there.
I'm going to go into a recovery program and then I'm going to run it later.
Yeah.
It was just one step after another. And, I don't know if we're allowed to use the God piece in this story.
God is real right here.
He stepped in, he stepped in, he showed me the way, every step of the way. And it was a series of events from there. As long as I surrendered continuously, I should say, as long as I do surrender continuously, I know he'll take care of me and give me that purpose and significance that I prayed to that God before I met him.
That's amazing.
That I have today.
Wow. So, and I'm interested, I want to go back to the dope man.
Yeah.
Is that okay? So,
everybody wants to go back to the dope man.
Everyone is interested in the dope man. So, I come at it from a different angle. I never wasn't. I was homeless as a child and an adult, but I never became addicted to substances. That I think because I witnessed members of my family going through addiction at a young age, and to me, I recognized rather early in my life that I saw the lack of worth and the lack of agency that was a result from that drug use, and I knew that I could never go down that route. That actually scared me more than gang banging, being shot, being whatever, selling drugs. I could do anything other than that. That was like scary dangerous.
Interesting.
Right? And for me, there was no entertainment value.
Right.
It was so scary. It was like, it's just too scary. So the entertainment value was even stolen just from the fear of it, right? Coming from that side and from law enforcement, it seems normal to me, at least the folks that I've engaged with, both as a civilian and the security world and law enforcement. The dope man really wants to indebt you. They want to front you those drugs.
Sure. Yeah.
If you had to guess how many people, let's say 4,500 chronically houseless in Portland, right? I would say a large majority of those, right, at least from the statistics that we internally have, are using on some capacity.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of different numbers. I think 80% is the hovering. And if I look at the real-time data of the people that are coming through my shelter, I would say it's even higher. I would argue it's 90%. That's
so scary. So let's just use 85%. How many of those 85%, so roughly, let's say 3,800 people are indebted to their drug dealer at any moment during 1 week? How many do you think?
It's so hard to say. I could speculate. I can tell you I was, and from the time I was always indebted. It was always front,
always
sell a little, use what I can. That's the game. And
I catch people stealing a bicycle, and I'm like, yo, bro, like, hey man, I try to jack you up, but like, why are you stealing a bike? Hey man, I got owe some money to this guy,
It's a fear of withdrawal. Anyone who's gone through opioid withdrawal, we addicts, opioid addicts, will do anything, say anything to anyone to get that next hit. And I knew it. It was against how I was raised. It was against how I knew it was wrong, but I was so afraid. I was deathly afraid. And then when I finally went through a cold turkey detox, 45 days of it.
Wow.
I knew, that I'll never do that again.
That's tough.
I'll never do that again.
Yeah. White knuckling it.
Yeah, it was rough. But I needed that. Yeah. And we can get into this a little bit, but it is of my opinion, and I see this, guys coming through my treatment center. If you get to be eased down slowly and gently, medically, i.e. they're giving you methadone or Suboxone or whatever, it's a much easier way to detox, right? It's more comfortable. The danger of that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. I think there's some good uses for it. Medical assisted treatment. There are use cases, and it can work.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Had that been offered to me, or that was the case, it would have taken away that 30 to 45 days of pure hell that I went through. That is now my deterrent. I lean into that anytime there's a temptation, or I had a surgery and I'm getting pain pills. What keeps me from taking a few extra, which I want to, I'm wired, I'm an addict. the reason I don't do it is I do not want to get hooked again. I don't want to go through that absolute hell of detox. And so, the guys that I have in my programs now that choose to go through the easy detox and now I'm going to go detox and then I'll come to your program.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
99% of them relapse. That's real-time data, 99%.
Yeah.
The ones that cold turkey.
I agree with that data, by the way.
The ones that cold turkey it, they have a lot better chance because then they know, like, oh, I'm not doing that again.
Just on the subject of detox, how much of your ego is attached to that drug, the drug of choice for the addict? So the ego wants to protect your identity.
Sure.
Right? And as we lose self-worth, the ego rises up, right? There's kind of like a juxtaposition. It's kind of contradictory, right?
Sure.
And so the ego wants to protect yourself. How much of the ego wants to drive you like, hey, this is who you are. You don't know anything else.
Yeah.
If you're not an addict, you're nobody.
Right. I think for me, my identity, I didn't want to be an addict. I actually always wanted to be a respectable member of society. I came from a family. Dad was a Silicon Valley businessman growing up. My mom was a Montessori teacher, and I wanted a normal life. I always did.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to get that identity. The identity, and I didn't want to be known as. I did everything I could to hide. In fact, before I got to heroin, it was pain pills that I got addicted to, and so pain pills come from doctors. When you're getting
very respectable,
right, and when you're getting them from doctors, I didn't have to associate with that dark world of drug dealers, which is how I got to 42
So
years.
you really never wanted to associate with the darkness?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No. It was
So you weren't like, I want to be a Hell's Angel?
No.
Okay,
no.
gotcha.
I wanted to get high. I wanted to get started. I wanted to get high, and then I wanted to medicate because in 2005 there was a tragedy. My dad, my hero, my best friend, was killed in a tractor accident of all things, a fluke accident.
I'm so sorry, man.
Flipped on him and killed him instantly. And I was in the Army. I was serving with the 101st at that time. And they send in the Red Cross. Anytime you see a Red Cross helicopter flying, it's never good news. And that
that's
day,
horrible, man.
they handed me a message, said, your dad's been killed. That was it. You're going on leave to figure this out. And that's when my drug use, recreational use became medicinal.
And you were still active duty at the time?
And I was still active duty.
Were you using the physician assistants and the sick call to...
So I wasn't actually at
Man,
that phase in
good for
my
you,
life.
Bro. Good for you.
Well, the reason I went in the Army was one of my higher rock bottoms. I was on the verge of homelessness down in San Diego. I was using cocaine and partying.
OB, baby.
Yep, I was down there.
Surfing in OB.
Yep, and all my friends were growing up and getting jobs and getting married, and I was still partying with 20-year-olds, even younger. And I knew that as soon as I lost my roommates were kicking me out, and I didn't want to go to rehab. Right, so I decided to join the Army. I'm like, oh, the Army, they'll square me away, and it worked for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
It really worked. I learned to put my head down, do what you're told, and they'll take care of you, and they did. And but it creeped up. Yes, to answer your question, there were sick calls, and I got some teeth pulled to get combat ready, and I would get those pills, but I knew that I would get in trouble if I kept it up. It wasn't until I went on leave. When I went on leave, my dad was killed. My stepmom had a bunch of pills, Xanax, Vicodin. I started taking those. I started drinking, and for 30 days while I was on leave, I did nothing but get high and also cocaine.
Had you experienced depression prior in your life?
Never. And to this day, I never have.
So that wound, that emotional wound, really opened you up to becoming a drug addict.
I didn't know how to process the loss of my hero. My father, my best friend. I didn't have any. There was no faith in my life. In our family, there was no real faith. We were a pretty secular family, and so I wasn't spiritually equipped to process that death. And I knew that the substances, whatever they may be, would at least numb me. And I thought, okay, I can go back to the Army. And I was about to go career. I was OCS. I was accepted into OCS.
Awesome, bro,
I was getting ready to go in, and when I got back to Fort Campbell, I just couldn't re-engage.
Yeah.
I mean, it only took a matter of time before they caught on, and somehow I got a general discharge under honorable conditions. They took compassion on me because of the loss, but
as well they should.
Yeah, and I depreciated it, but if we're being honest, I didn't deserve that. I was kicked out for using drugs on base, and it was no good. But that was the catalyst where it went from recreational to trying to numb the pain.
Yeah, because now you're losing more identity.
Yeah.
In that you were a soldier.
Right.
In the 101st, 502.
Yep, I gave that away. So now I have no identity at all other than the son of a father who is gone. And, there's a story there with my dad didn't have a will. And, and I had it in my head that someday I would inherit my dad's wealth, which was fairly great. And, in a twist of divine intervention there, my brother and I did not receive any of that inheritance because he didn't have a will.
That's a really good thing.
It was a really good thing. I didn't see it that way in the moment.
Course.
I'd be dead today if I had gotten that kind of money.
Yeah, that probably opened that wound up even more.
It did.
Right.
It did. And it took, again, I didn't see how great what a gift that was today until I got sober and, went back.
You probably would have died.
Yeah. Oh,
would have overdosed.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. So, man, that you're telling us about your journey, and eventually you end up here in Portland.
Right.
You're homeless on the streets in Portland for how long?
So I was living in my Jeep. So I was homeless in Bend, Oregon for about a month or so.
Folks, if you're gonna be homeless anywhere in America, Bend, Oregon is fantastic. Fantastic.
It wasn't bad, but it got bad real quick because the dope man, as you referred to him, we call him Crazy Cameron for the purposes
Crazy Cameron
of
be
this
knocking
story.
on your door.
Crazy Cameron was knocking on all the doors, and I knew I had to get away from this individual. And so my grand plan in my addiction at that point was to jump in my '99 Jeep Cherokee, drive to Portland.
Oh, good.
I had a strategy.
Cross the mountains.
Yep. And I knew I could live in a Walmart parking lot. They'd leave me alone. It's a 24-hour store.
True story.
There was a whole culture of RVs and whatnot back then. This is 2018. But I wanted to get off the heroin. I knew from the first moment I tried this stuff, I knew it was just evil. I knew it was going to take me out. I had to get off of it. I didn't know how, though. Still too proud to go to a rehab. I'd never been to well, that's not true. I did a short stint back in 2013, but it didn't stick. It didn't work for me. So I was looking for a different solution, and that was the only plan I had was white knuckle. So I'm in the Jeep 5 days. By the 5th day, I couldn't handle it.
You're going insane.
I'm suicidal. Wanted to find the buildings in Portland that didn't have guardrails, jump off. Again, I'm praying to this God I didn't know, to the universe, as I called it. Some purpose. I don't know how to get out of this. I need some purpose, a reason to exist. And it's funny because shortly after that, I caved and said, I got to get another hit. I got on the phone. I didn't even have cell service.
You called the dope man.
I poached the Wi-Fi off of Walmart. I jumped on Facebook. I found a girl that I used to use with that I knew I could con her into bringing me some dope to the Walmart parking lot. And
she probably owed money to Cameron as well, the dope man.
Guess who showed up instead of her?
Exactly.
Crazy Cameron. And so he found, I don't know how he did it, but he got a hold of her account or whatever, and he found me, and I came out of the bathroom.
How much were you into with this guy?
Oh, it was penny, $120.
$120?
Yeah, it was not a lot of money.
So like maybe a week.
I had stepped
back then
on
heroin, what, $15 a day?
My habit, I had almost 200 a day.
Oh my God.
I had a really bad habit. Yeah.
Back then that's hard.
I
That's
was
hardcore.
shooting about 3.5 grams a day.
Holy dude, I'm surprised you're alive.
It was terrible.
That is insane.
And had fentanyl been around then, I mean, it was just coming into the scene, but it wasn't widely. I would be dead.
Yeah.
But, again, I count my lucky chickens in that department.
Bro, you must have a lot of chickens in that department because you're a pretty lucky man.
Yes. Blessed, I like to say today. But he was in my...
You should take those lucky chickens out to eat and not at Chick-fil-A. Okay? You know what I'm saying?
Crazy Cameron was in my Jeep when I showed up. He was in there with a gun, and he put the gun at me, and he said, "Get in the car and drive. I'm taking your Jeep and everything you own." And I had everything I owned in this thing. The title, my social security card, my birth, everything.
Made you sign the title over?
He did at gunpoint.
Oh my God, bro.
So
this dude, that's hardcore, man.
Well, watch how God steps into this. So the series of divine events, right? Okay, I prayed to the universe, give me some purpose. I don't know what to do, help me. Crazy Cameron shows up, right? He's an ex-con prison guy, arms the size of, both my legs, which I know is not saying much, but they're pretty big arms, tatted up. I was terrified of this guy. He was also a meth addict, so, I could see.
So he's a former prison gang guy.
Yeah.
He was, to run the block.
I don't know exactly what he was in for, but the rumors were that he had killed people in the past. That's all I remember, and so I was terrified of this guy. And I'm driving, gun is to the side, and all of a sudden...
You have a gun.
He has the gun. He's got the gun, low pointed to the side, my hip. And he's having me drive, and I just remember I could see the knuckles on the steering
So
wheel.
you think you're gonna die?
I literally
You're like,
thought,
this is
or
gonna-
worse, he's going to beat the crap out of me and leave me, in a bloody pulp on the side of the road. And so I'm thinking, I got to get out of the situation. How am I going to do it? And all of a sudden, Crazy Cameron says to me in this very strange and clear voice, "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. God told me, not this one. He has a plan for you. You need to go to rehab and get your life together."
What? The dope man told you this as he's robbing you
Yes.
of your vehicle and all your worldly possessions.
Yep.
Everything you own.
He tells me that God told him not to hurt me. Something about me was different, special, not to hurt, not this one, is what he said.
Wow.
And now, remember, I don't have any faith at this point in the story, so I'm thinking he's insane. This guy is methed out.
So this guy came to kill you.
That's what I'm thinking.
And
right?
somehow there was an intervention and you're still here.
Now he's telling me he's not going to hurt me because God told him not to.
You need to count those lucky chickens, bro.
Yeah.
And thank them.
And he
every day.
didn't. He didn't. He had me sign it over, pulled over into a park. He drove off, and that's when I was standing there going. And it wasn't until about 90 days later that I remembered all this. Right, I remembered Crazy Cameron in that moment, and what I remembered first. The addict mind is pretty obsessive. Okay, so I get into the program. I'm 90 days sober. I'm starting to think clearly. Right, I'm feeling better. But I started thinking about that Jeep. Right, my last possession was taken from me, and I was pretty pissed off about Crazy Cameron. Right, and I'm thinking I gotta get this guy. Now that I'm sober 90 days, I have the whole weight of the law behind me, right? I could really I'm thinking Grand Theft Auto, and I went through a list for 3 nights. I couldn't even sleep. I'm just thinking how I'm going to get this guy. And I even knew how to find him, right? Facebook. That's how he found me.
Easy.
So I go down to the library, and I log on to my Facebook account. I look at Messenger, and I see he's online, a little green dot next to his name. I'm like, I got him. And right as I'm starting to type my message, it hit me like a ton of bricks. God told me, not this one. He has a plan for you. Now, the program I'm in is a faith-based 12-step recovery program, right?
Yeah.
And it just hit me, and I was like, oh, God, it was God. I believe he really did tell this guy in his state, whatever his mind, right? He told him not to hurt me, and that just showed me that God was real. He'd been pursuing me probably my whole life. I was just too blind to see it. And that gift of desperation is what I needed to see it. And even then, it took 90 more days before I actually. And so all the the kind of head knowledge that I had in those 90 days of a higher power dropped right from my head into my heart. And instead of giving him my ridiculous plan to get my car back, I wrote him a simple line. I said, "Thank you, Cameron, for what you did. Enjoy my Jeep." And that was it.
Good job, bro.
Yeah. He even wrote back. Actually, he sent one message. He's like, "Wow, I'm proud of you."
Oh my gosh. Dope man. What a crazy story.
Yeah.
If you would have told him the wrong message, you don't want to threaten someone who is used to killing people.
Right.
That's like a really bad thing to do. Right. And so, man, that's impressive. So as you're talking about this, I'm just kind of wondering in the back of my mind, what's the role of law enforcement in all this? Because here in Oregon and in many other places, we've kind of started the process of decriminalization of narcotics.
Right.
Even states that haven't decriminalized, they're not really prosecuting at the levels they used to.
Right.
And as someone that used to be a police officer that now does security, and I'm involved in all these different nonprofits, I always think about the scenario that I always was worried about finding myself in as a police officer. And let's say I'm trying to help someone that's homeless, and I go to them. I'm a police officer. And by jurisdiction, I dealt with this very often. And I'm like, "Hey, you doing okay tonight? What's going on?" And let's say they tell me, "You know what? I want to change my life. I want to get into detox. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm going to stop all this," right? And at the moment they're packing up their tent, maybe some heroin in a syringe drops out or a firearm drops out. At that moment, I can no longer be that agent of transformation for them.
Right.
I have to be an agent of the law.
Sure.
Now, I don't have a clear duty to act, but I have to act, right? And at that point, am I robbing that person of the ability
to get help,
to have a different life for the rest of their life?
You put me in a difficult situation.
It's a difficult
because
situation.
my normal answer to that isn't going to work with the way that you presented that problem. So I appreciate that challenging situation. But here's what I will say. I've always respected law enforcement. I'm a soldier, right? I think that we need law and order. We need rules. I needed rules. When I was out there using, I was afraid of cops. I didn't hate them. I just was afraid. I didn't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
And so I put a lot of energy into hiding. I would drive to parking garages and find places. And in Bend, it's a little different than here. In Bend, they will bust you. Right. In 2018.
It's paradise, man.
Yeah, they didn't mess around, and it's a small community.
Every paradise gets policed.
But I remember coming to Portland, and people were like, "Oh, you can just use it." And even in 2018, that people were like, "Oh, cops aren't going to mess with you if you're shooting up in your car. They're not." And I was like, "No, I didn't believe him." So I still hit it. But I will tell you,
so it caused more angst, and it made you work for your addiction. You had to work for it.
It did, right? and it instilled some fear. Personally, if the way the situation is now in Portland is, I believe it's pretty dangerous, because for me, an addict out there today where you can openly use drugs on the street and you're not going to get in trouble, that would have perpetuated my addiction farther and farther and farther. And
it's an open air drug market,
as the buzz phrase is said a lot. But I will tell you this about the Portland police. Here's a plug, because when I was in the program in our shelter, I had a graveyard shift running the shelter. As part of being in the program, you have a job to help.
Great shelter.
Yeah.
I love I love the program.
We like it too. It works. It worked for me.
It does work.
But
one of the highest rates of success actually in the industry here.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting graveyard shift over the shelter, and 2:00 in the morning, I get a knock on the front door, and it's Portland Police. And, it was my first interaction in sobriety. It was my first interaction where I didn't have anything to hide, right? And so I opened the door. I'm like, what can I do for you, officer? And he said, I've got a guy here. He's pretty drunk. I picked him up. I don't want to take him to jail. Do you have a mat that you could give him a mat?
That's awesome.
And I was blown away by that. I'm like, those aren't the police that I knew in my head, right? That wasn't the image of the police that I had. And so instant respect for them. And this was 2019 at this point. I think that today they have they have a tough job. They've been hamstringed by our current policies. And I think that their role is extremely important. And I think that they do the best that they can with what, and right now, because they can't prosecute, using your example, right? Let's get back to your example, because it's a tough one. If they were able to prosecute, and they had to, let's say if they had to, a gun's a different story, right? But, if a piece of heroin or drugs fall out, today they don't, we have Measure 110, it's been decriminalized, and that allows them to provide the help, right? Overlook the drugs and provide the help. The issue, as I see it, is that there's not enough help out there. We haven't established, and Oregon's the last in the nation for available drug and alcohol treatment.
I think we're 48th when it comes to actual treatment beds availability.
Okay. So it's bad.
Yeah. I got that number from Tiffany Hammer.
Okay, and that might be true. At one point, I know that we're one of the worst in the nation for addiction crisis, and we're one of the worst in available treatment beds. Yeah. And so when 110 was enacted, it was a good concept. Like we can't criminalizing drugs just simply to criminalize them. Yeah. It isn't really helping anyone.
Putting someone in prison because they're addicted to a substance,
right?
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And I spend a lot of time in courtrooms now advocating for guys to keep them out of jail and put them into our treatment program. And the judges they don't want to put people in jail.
In fact, I think the last time I was with the DA and we discussed this, it used to be prior to Measure 110, almost 90% of pure, narcotics prosecutions, right, ended up in some type of what is called a golden handcuffs program,
right,
where you're using the threat of prosecution to get someone in treatment,
right,
and most of the people, at least in Oregon, that are serving time for drugs, it's because they threw away the gun charge, or they threw away the person crime, the assault that was there, and so the only thing they were left with was a drug charge, right? Because they couldn't prove that he actually put the gun to her head, because you don't have a cooperating witness, or you don't have a cooperating victim, right? But yeah, almost always, especially in Oregon, prior to 110, a lot of these programs were, were running because of this type of.
We had a drug court in Multnomah
Yeah.
County, and for the life of me, I don't know why that went away. I mean, drug court is a really good deterrent that will actually get people into treatment rather than jail. But the problem is that we don't have a legal deterrent for drugs on our streets.
No.
And I can tell you from experience, if I was an active addict, I would love being in Portland because I could just use and use and use, and there's no legal deterrent. I think it's a combination. There has to be available a soft hand to help and with compassion, but you also have to have deterrence through the law to keep people from killing themselves and harming people around in the properties. I mean, we're in a real mess right now. We've seen the numbers. We've all watched the news exposés on Measure 110, and out of 4,000 tickets, less than 1% actually took the treatment option. Yeah. And it's a good thing because let's say 60% had said yes to treatment. There's not enough treatment for them.
Where are we going to send them?
Right. Our beds are full.
Yeah, I mean, the nonprofit that I chair. We only have 3 employees, and we were able to transition 176 people last month. 161 we were unable to transfer or transition because there were no available beds.
I believe that.
At a shelter or detox facility.
I believe that.
And the only 24-hour, 7-day-a-week detox facility that you can go to at any moment isn't even here. It's in Washington State.
Right.
We have to drive people to other state.
Right.
In our most dire circumstance, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to transition again. Is that okay?
Yeah. It's your show.
Hey, it's our show. It's your show, right? So when it comes to the nonprofit world, right? I think that we're learning something new, and I think that you're part of this learning curve, right? Mm-hmm. I think it used to be prior to these new. How shall I say it, dynamics that are in play, right? The lack of enforcement because of Measure 110, right? All these new dynamics, I think that the current model that many nonprofits employ is no longer as effective as it used to be. I'll give you an example. Just in your story alone, you said, hey, I was working the night shift at this nonprofit that you're now the executive director for, and a police officer stopped by and had someone, hey, come on, can you have a bed available? Without that enforcement piece, it's difficult for individuals to self-refer themselves into a program.
That's right.
And so in my world, I call this the Field of Dreams model, right? It's like in the 90s, because of all these mechanisms, the prosecution, the DA's office and law enforcement, you were constantly getting referrals, even from hospitals, right? But because of liability issues, hospitals, everyone's worried about liability. Hospitals aren't taking as many people as they used to because of COVID, right? Because of all of this, I think what I've seen in the past 3 or 4 years is that I go to talk to people on the street, and I'm like, hey, when's the last time someone talked to you about getting into a program? Shelter, detox. And they're like, oh gosh, never, 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot.
And so the Field of Dreams model essentially tells people on the street, hey, when you can gather up enough self-worth and you can gather up enough self-agency, right? And you're not high, why don't you abandon your tent and all your worldly possessions, go steal a shopping cart, push the shopping cart back 20, 30 minutes to your tent. Hopefully you have a couple things left. Gather everything you own and put it in that stolen shopping cart, and then push it around town, and hopefully you'll find a place that'll take you. You get in line, maybe you wait 5-6 hours, you got a 50-50 chance you get a shelter that night.
Right.
When I ask people, hey, if you wanted to go somewhere right now and get into treatment, where would you go? If you had a shopping cart and you get, well, maybe this place. And people don't know what to do. And so I think that this Field of Dreams model, where we just build this great facility and everyone sits up in their office, right, waiting for people to show up, I think that needs to change.
Yeah.
I think that we need to focus on street teams. And I know that you do this. And I know that I don't want to plug your event, but you do an event regularly. And you're one of the very few nonprofits that does this.
Right.
You're on the streets regularly.
Every week.
Every week, contacting people, trying to get them into shelters.
Right.
Why aren't more people doing this?
Yeah, I think I don't know why. I can tell you that it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
It costs money.
A lot of money.
We depend on volunteers weekly to show up to run the event, and then from there, logistically, the magic is the consistency, right? So we figured out early, and I wasn't even a part of it when it started. This thing's been going on for 20 years. But it was the consistently showing up at the same place at the same time every week for 20 years. The houseless community knows that we're there. They know that they can come get basic services. There's a meal, there's haircuts,
beard trim.
Right. And you can get these things anywhere. I mean, Portland's the easiest place in the entire nation to get these kind of services. But what's different about this particular event is that we sit down and we create an environment for community, and the outreach workers or my staff and the volunteers can sit down and create community, building trust, learning stories of these individuals. And we're not going to get people into treatment or into shelters every single night, but they know that we're there, and they know that we're connected to a shelter and treatment, and those are available. So maybe the first 10 times that someone's down there, they're going to say no or not be ready. But when they are, we'll be there, and we can bring them in right away. And so it's a good model. We like it. Why are more people not doing it? It's extremely complicated. It's extremely expensive. Logistically, it's hard, and it's exhausting.
It's very exhausting.
It's exhausting work.
It is.
We're fortunate enough to have most of the people, everyone on my staff is lived experience. And so, we do this to stay sober.
Yeah.
We're lucky that we're blessed to get a paycheck along the side, in addition.
Awesome. Yeah.
But, I have to do that kind of stuff because it keeps me on the front lines and connected to those on the streets. And I see them struggling, and, I don't want to go back there. But there's another argument too that can be made that
I called a shelter one time, and I said, and this is a shelter I work with regularly. I said, hey, we need someone, they need transportation. And they said, we can be there in 4 hours.
Wow.
And I'm like, 4 hours? Okay, so that's why that led us to, we just use a private car service now.
Sure.
We use a cab, taxi cabs.
Yeah.
And we just taxi cab people.
Is that Tiffany's radio cab thing?
Yeah.
That's great. I think what she's doing is great. That's innovative, right?
You use a private, because not every, could you afford 10 Sprinter vans to be out every day driving around?
Oh my gosh, I can barely afford one.
Exactly. So we have to create new processes to help these. I call it an urban refugee crisis. We have 4,500 Americans that are chronically homeless, dying on the streets of Portland.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do.
Right.
They have no idea where to go.
Right.
No one's walking around telling them, hey, I can get you into a place right now.
Right.
I can get you into Detox. I can get you into a shelter. What do you want to do?
Right.
I can get you to, there's a tiny home village. There's an RV village.
Right.
We have all these different set-asides. and I just don't see the people out there, other than really your group. I don't see other nonprofits engaging.
I think there's others out there for sure. I don't want to speak bad about.
I'm not trying to talk bad about them.
Right, and I know, but I
don't see them.
I think what's important to know too is that. So here's some positive stuff. Right now is a chance for the city, the county, the state. They're finally realizing that the current situation is unacceptable. We've got to make some changes. And, yes, we need housing, right? So we're building a lot of housing, and that's great. Eventually, we'll need those housing. It's very challenging to say that this is a housing problem. Lack of housing did not cause my homelessness, right?
No, you had a very nice house, apparently.
Right. Right.
It's good.
And it actually took me to lose my housing, my Jeep,
Correct.
to actually get me into the space where I was desperate enough to heal and get back into society eventually. So there's this great article right now out, and I won't say the publication, but a great article about the nuanced approach to homelessness that is needed in order to actually start seeing change. Housing is an important piece of that. We've got to build more housing. Treatment option, huge piece.
Yeah, that's
shelter,
huge. Yeah.
huge piece to it. There's a job, being able to employ individuals who have been homeless on the street for whatever their reason is, putting them back into the workforce is not an easy task. I mean, you got criminal records, you got mental health issues, you've got health issues, you got all kinds of things. And so the article talks about, look, we can't just say that putting people in a house, that is the solution to the homelessness. It's
that makes no sense at all.
They use this example that, like, okay, you get a hospital and you got a line of people at the hospital. Everyone's got a separate issue: cancer, heart disease, you name it. And everyone pulls up and they get to the front of the line and they give them a vial of aspirin. The same thing, every single person.
Yep.
That's what giving a bed to a homeless person is, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
You got to look
agree.
at each individual. And what I love about what you guys are doing is you're actually going out there and you're talking to individuals, right?
Yeah.
And you're learning their stories and you're finding out exactly what is their need, what their needs are.
Yeah,
everyone needs a meal.
We call it client first.
I love that.
So rather than housing first, how about we actually go client first?
Right.
How about we treat them like
Right.
housing's not the priority. You, the individual, are the priority.
Right.
What do you need to get better? Because housing doesn't cause mental illness.
Right.
Housing doesn't cause drug addiction.
Right.
Right. So how are we going to treat you as an individual in order to get you to a place of success?
Yep.
And eventually housing.
Yep.
Housing has to be there. It has to be the goal.
It does. It has to be there, and I'm glad that we're
Yeah.
we're building and we're creating housing and supported housing and transitional. We need more transitional housing. That's not being talked about. It's not being funded right now. Like, we need places where individuals like myself, once we graduate a program, right, we have another year or two to have some kind of supported transitional housing.
Yeah.
That model isn't being funded right now.
No.
And we've got to do that.
Have to be.
We've got to do that.
Do people need to learn financial literacy before they get to housing?
Absolutely.
How to create a budget, how to live on money.
Absolutely. And that comes in, that's going to come from community. That's going to come from, that continued peer mentorship and that kind of stuff. And it's happening. It's not that it's unavailable. It's just we're focused, I believe, we're focused too much on housing first without talking about the other prongs that are needed to solve this
Again,
crisis.
I call this the field of dreams model.
Right.
If you build it, they will come. Well, did you even ask them what they want?
Right.
Why not put the individual first? Before treatment, before anything else, we have to have programs that calculate the individual steps that individual has to take along their journey to make them a whole person.
Yeah. And I want to stay positive, because we're in a very unique time. I think that as a county, as a city, we're all fed up. We're all done with it. And I think that for the first time, we're starting to see people having this exact discussion more and more.
Yeah.
And I think that I hope.
I think we're going to lead the nation, actually.
Eventually.
I think Portland, because of what we're going through,
Right.
people are going to be experiencing this 5-10 years down the road, and we're going to have all the solutions.
Yep.
here.
Portland will come back. It will be a great city again, but it's going to take a lot of these conversations. And more than that, I mean, actually, the article I was talking about earlier said we're done with conversations. We need to start seeing some action. And I think that our leadership is doing the best they can to respond to that. Government moves slow. And I don't think this is going to get solved at the government
that
level.
Your glass is halfway full. I love that.
Right. But it's going to take the private sector too. I really believe that the private sector is going to need to come in and start funding some of these smaller nonprofits that aren't available, can't take public funding because we don't fit the housing first model. We fit the healing first model.
Yeah.
And
I don't
there's
fit
not
the housing
funds out
first
there.
model.
Right.
I'm like, hey, what do you need today? What do I need today? I need to not be with my abusive boyfriend
Right.
because he forces me to use drugs.
Right.
Okay, let's get you away from that individual. We'll check on you every day for the next 5 days. On that 5th day, I'm ready to go to a shelter.
Right.
Because their first step wasn't shelter. Their first step was getting away from their abusive individual
Exactly.
who forces them to use drugs because they're a drug addict.
Yes.
And so people don't understand that it's so nuanced. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with individuals.
Yes.
We're not. It's great that you want to program everything. Everyone wants programs. But programs are for robots, right? That's for a computer. So you run a computer program on a computer. You can't program people, right? You can invite people to a program, but you don't program them.
Right.
Right? People have their own programming. They're born with it. And they're going to figure out and discover their needs and what they require in order to take those steps.
Yes.
And we have to sit there with them and journey with them.
Right.
Ponder those things with them. Experience those moments with them. And give them assistance so we can increase their worth, their sense of worth, increase their agency. And as we work with them, we call it the inversion of the power dynamic, right? If you sit up in an office with millions of dollars and you say, you down there, come to me and I'll give you what you need, that Field of Dreams model, rather than you're actually increasing that power dynamic and you're making people feel have less worth and less agency. But when you say, hey, we're strong and powerful and we have money and we're going to come out to the street and we're going to serve you. What do you need? How can we help you? You're actually humbling yourself. And then the point of humility, that power dynamic inverts. And as you lose power, as we with money and wealth and power, as we serve others who don't have it, we literally hand our power over to them and we empower them, which creates worth and agency and allows them to make decisions for themselves.
Right.
But it's only through humbling ourselves and serving others, right?
And at the same time, there's got to be structure and rules for the rest of the people.
You got to have
out
programs.
There. You can't. There's a person that I respect a lot in this field that says it really well. When the needs of the houseless outweigh the needs of the rest of society, that's a broken system.
Yeah.
And I do hate to say, I think we're there now. I think that right now we're kind of loving the houseless community to death. Now, I know this is kind of counter to what we're talking about.
You're going to take heat for that one.
But it's true. It's
I
true.
I agree with you.
I think that we got to keep
I've never heard
loving
this
them.
said before, but it's so true.
It is true. There are 300 plus nonprofits in Portland alone focused on the houseless crisis. Over 300.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And a lot of them are receiving monies.
And with the more money, the worse the problem gets. And all of this comes back to what we're actually talking to is it's because we don't know what the needs are. Yeah. We need to be out there and we're loving on these people, but we're also finding out what it is that they need. And if it's those that don't need anything except their drugs and that's where they're at, then you got to enforce laws. Then you got to say, okay, well, do we want to allow that on our streets in Portland? And I'll probably take heat for this, but I don't think that. No, we don't. We do not want to allow people sitting outside of your business smoking fentanyl. I mean, you're not going to be able to run a business that way. And so we do have to enforce those laws and get those people out of here. And if they don't want treatment, I hate to be the guy. I mean, I run a treatment program. You can't force people into treatment. It doesn't work.
No,
it
they
doesn't
need it.
work.
They have to make the choice.
Right. So what do you do at that point? That's the next question is, okay, so they don't want treatment and we can't put them in jail. Yeah. What do we do?
I don't think we're ever going to get to that point where we're going to make a decision here. I don't think that, I don't think Portland has the ability to make a decision about that.
I don't have the answer to that, by the way. So
I have a lot of answers, but at the end of the day, I feel called in my life to help individuals. July 4th, the story I told you was a real story. On July 4th, we're cooking up. We served 750 meals, probably like 500-600 people. Some people got a double portion, right? And so we came just at the end of it. We had a lady who came up to us who we'd known for 2 or 3 years in Old Town. She's like, "Hey y'all," she goes, "Hey." I'm like, "Hey, what's up? Y'all out of food?" I was like, "Yeah, we just served the last." We just served the last kosher hot dog, right? Because I like beef, and so she goes, "Well," I said, "Hey," I was with my wife and our daughter. She was not 2 yet, and I said, "Hey, why don't my wife and I walk you over to Subway, right down the street from where you meet?" I said, "Let's get a Subway sandwich and just talk. What's going on? I haven't seen you in a while." And so she's talking to us, and she's like, "Alex, I'm ready. I need to get into treatment." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Today's July 4th." Again, it's the Field of Dreams model. Yeah. It's only when we want you to come to us that you can come to us. It's not when you need, not when the individual has a need. It's when the agency has a need.
Right.
Right. And so I said, it's July 4th. There are no detox at 4 p.m. taking anyone today. what do you really need to get clean? And she said, you know what? My boyfriend, we know her boyfriend, he's abusive and he really makes me use drugs. That's who's making me use drugs. And I said, well, let's get you safe and away from that person, number one. So we were able to do that. And then number two, she showed up the next morning and we did all the paperwork. Because as you know, to get into detox, sometimes you have to have a bed in a shelter somewhere else.
Right, a referral.
A referral
we
bed.
refer to detox centers.
Yeah. And so every single sheltering agency has different paperwork.
Right.
Right. And there's no tracking system for beds.
Right.
So you have to call on July 4th and then July 5th. You have to call and see if there's going to be an opening.
Yep.
You find an opening and then you say, okay, send me your paperwork. Then you got to print the paperwork. There are no printers on the streets of Portland, by the way.
Right.
And then we had all the paperwork for the shelter and also the detox place. Filled it all out on July 5th, right? We're able to get her into detox then the following day, and you got to arrive before 8:30 in the morning, and you got to be probably earlier because you want to be first in line. And she was able to meet Oregon Health Plan record. She had money so that they could, so these agencies can bill and make money for treatment. We were able to satisfy the insurance requirements, satisfy everything they needed. Got her into treatment, right, and had all that paperwork filed, and we're able to, that took about 30 hours to do all that.
It's wild.
To get that one person. Now, this person has not been back in Old Town. So we lost track of them. Once they went to the shelter, we lost track of them. This is another problem, is that there's no one shares a central tracking for the individual. We're not tracking the individuals.
Right.
We're only tracking what treatments are offered from the agencies because we're tracking that for billing, right?
Yeah.
So we care more about the billing aspect
For sure.
than the individual aspect.
Yeah.
And so this has to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We have to find a way to help people.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you came in today. I will talk about this for hours because this is what I love to do. Lance, you're really a testament to the ability for someone to humble themselves and to say, I need help. And when an individual can do that, anything is possible. And the possibilities are in front of me. You're an executive director. The organization you work for is nationwide. It's a big organization. You're running one of the largest areas that has one of the highest amount of need. You're the executive director of that. And just 5 years ago, your dope man was still in your car, bro.
That's right. That's right. Thank God he did, too.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I really thank you for coming in today. Tell us about what's going on in the future, what your plans are, and where you think this is going to be going. Close us out.
I'm just grateful to be part of the solution. I think I couldn't tell you exactly where this is headed, but I can tell you that we will continue to take individuals one by one that need help and give them a safe place to heal. We will. My passion moving forward is to create that transitional housing step, that gap between treatment and stable long-term housing, that transitional housing. So I'm working on projects now to get some transitional aftercare housing where our graduates can go and live in a supported, community environment, because that's the key. I really think that that's the gap. From my own experience, you really got to have a community, and you have to be able to ease your way back into society. And so I look forward to working with private developers, working with public money, and trying to figure out how we can build these transitional housing models that will allow people to heal.
Yeah, definitely needed.
Yes.
Are you on social media anywhere where people can find you? And if they want to join in and find out the organization you lead and they want to help or volunteer?
Yeah. I mean, I want to say, Night Strike is the organization, the event Thursday nights of the Birdside Bridge. It's been around in Portland 20 years.
I'm sure you're on LinkedIn though. There's some professionals out there that maybe want to donate.
Yep, it's Lance Orton. Night Strike. You can find it under the Burnside Bridge on Thursday nights. It's hosted by City Team, is the organization that took it over this past year, and it's a great place to see a model where people are actually being met where they're at on the streets in a consistent manner, and from there we provide solutions into treatment, shelter, more lasting long-term solutions.
Fantastic. Lance, thank you for coming in today. Thanks for watching the ride along. Again, this is a studio only event. We're going to be back on the streets tomorrow and then the day after that because we're not going to give up. We're going to go out there and we're going to help every person we can find. Thank you for joining us today, and look up Lance on LinkedIn. If you're in the Portland area and you want to meet someone that knows what they're doing when it comes to the drug addiction crisis and the homelessness crisis, this is the guy, Lance Orton. Check him out.